Ramiro I was king of Asturias from 842 until his death. He was son of King Bermudo I, and became king after a struggle for succession that followed the death of Alfonso II without issue. He was a contemporary of ar-Rahman II, Umayyad Emir of Córdoba. During his turbulent reign, the chronicles relate that he had to fend off attacks from both Vikings and Moors. Numerous important structures, such as his recreational palace Santa Maria del Naranco, were built during his reign in the estilo Ramirez that prefigured Romanesque architecture. Gaining the throne. The death of King Alfonso II brought about a succession crisis in the Kingdom of Asturias. According to the Chronicle of Alfonso III, credited to Ramiro's grandson, the childless Alfonso II chose as his successor Ramiro, his distant kinsman and son of Alfonso's predecessor Bermudo I. At the time of King Alfonso's death, Ramiro was outside of Asturias in Castile, where he was attending his own marriage ceremonies. Nepochan, Comes Palatia and the late king's son-in-law, challenged Ramiro's succession in his absence, being supported by Astures and Vascones who had been loyal to Alfonso II. Ramiro sought support in Galicia, where he formed an army and advanced toward Oviedo. Nepochan awaited Ramiro's advance at Cornellana, by the river Narcea, where either Ramiro defeated him in the Battle of the Bridge of Cornellana and Nepochan's troops fled without putting up a fight. Nepochan fled. He was pursued and captured by Count Scipion and Sonna. After his capture, Nepochan was blinded and interned in a monastery. Upon gaining the throne, Ramiro removed the system of election through which a faction of nobles had favored the succession of Nepochan, fending off Vikings. Early in his reign, Ramiro received word that Viking pirates were attacking along the Atlantic coast of France, and were headed in the direction of the Cantabrian coast of his own kingdom. The Vikings were mainly in search of navigable rivers and large cities to sack. Asturias lacked these. The chronicles of the era refer only to two minor attacks in Guijan and in A Coruña, both in 844. These attacks were confronted by troops sent by Ramiro. The Viking invaders, having failed to sack Asturias, later successfully attacked and sacked Lisbon and, still later, Cadiz and Seville. They then advanced into the interior of the Iberian Peninsula and menaced Córdoba. Abd ar-Rahman II organized a large army to defeat the invaders and recapture Cadiz and Seville. The legend of the Battle of Clavijo. According to legend, in 834 Ramiro defeated the Moors in the Battle of Clavijo. The date was later changed to 844 in order to accommodate the contradictions inherent to the story. The account of the battle came to the spotlight on a spurious charter forged in Santiago de Compostela in the early 12th century. Neither Asturian nor Arab chronicles of the period make any mention of such a battle. It is first mentioned in the chronicles of the Rodrigo Jiménez de Rada, 13th century, Archbishop of Toledo. The account of the battle appears to be a mythification of the historical 859 Second Battle of Albelda, in which Ramiro's son and successor Ordono I along with Garcia Iniguez of Pamplona crushed the forces of Musa ibn Qasi. According to the legend, during the battle, St. James the Greater, the Moor Slayer, is said to have appeared riding a white horse and bearing a white standard, and aided Asturian troops to defeat the Moors. This gave rise to the cult of St. James in Iberia, in thanks for the intervention of the apostle. Ramiro is said to have instituted a forged grant called voto Ramiro de Santiago, actually dating from the 12th century, a tax for the benefit of the church that was finally repealed by the Cádiz Cortes in 1812. Attempt to repopulate Leon. In reality, Ramiro's most important confrontation with the Muslim kingdoms of Iberia was not such a success. Emir ar-Rahman II of Córdoba likewise had to face Viking invaders, as well as internal rebellions led by Musa ibn Musa of the Banu Qasi family. Ramiro took advantage of the temporary respite by repopulating the city of Leon. This particular attempt at repopulation was short-lived. Abd ar-Rahman II dispatched both the Vikings and the rebels, and in 846 sent an army led by his son, forcing the Christians to evacuate Leon, which the Muslims burned. The city was not reoccupied until 856, under Ordono I. Internal conflict and harsh justice. While Asturias under Ramiro was relatively free of foreign confrontations, the latter portion of the reign saw much internal conflict. As mentioned above, his ascent to the throne had been problematic, and he continued to encounter discontented and rebellious nobles. The chronicler Albeldonsis makes mention of two of these rebels in particular. After defeating the rebel Proserpiniano, Ramiro condemned him to death along with his 7 sons. The leader of the second rebellion becomes Palatii Aldroi II. He condemned to be blinded. Ramiro also acted with severity against Latrones, whose number nonetheless grew the civil discord of his reign, and against Magos, presumably the pagans still rooted amongst the more isolated settlements. The chronicler Albeldonsis praises Ramiro as Justitia, that is, the rod of justice. Marriages, descendants, and succession. All that is known of Ramiro's first marriage is that it must have occurred early enough for his son to have already been an adult at the time of Ramiro's succession. Ramiro's son Ordono succeeded his father as King of Asturias upon the former's death. Ramiro contracted his second marriage to Paterna around 842, the year of the death of his predecessor Alfonso II. The chronicle of his grandson asserts that when Alfonso II died, Ramiro was in the Castilian lands for his wedding, suggesting that his wife was Castilian. It is presumed that the bride in this marriage was the Paterna who appears later as his widow. There is no solid evidence of children other than Ordono. Traditionally, Count Rodrigo of Castile has been named as son of Ramiro and Paterna. The medievalist Justo Pérez de Urbal says that Rodrigo was named Count of Castile because of his link to the Asturian royal family, and that it is possible that this link existed through Queen Paterna, but not necessarily through being her son. Ramiro also may have been the father of Gaetan, Count of Astorga and of El Bierzo. Since the 14th century Albayan al-Maghrib of Ibn Idari states that Gaetan was the brother of Ordono I de Asturias. Death and burial. Ramiro died the 1st of February 850 in his palace at Santa Maria del Naranco, located on Mount Naranco, near the city of Oviedo. He was buried in the Pantheon of Asturian kings in the Cathedral of San Salvador, Oviedo, alongside his second wife, Paterna. His remains were deposited in a stone sepulchre, no longer extant, next to a similar sepulchre for his predecessor Alfonso II El Casto. His sepulchre was inscribed Obitidivamemorieranimimus Rex Dikal, Februarii, Era DCCCLXXXVIII. Obtesto alvoso mediscachaclectuiestis. Ut pro requuielliusorare non desinetis. The Ramirense style in architecture. The art and architecture of Ramiro's reign forms the pre-Romanesque Ramirense phase of Asturian art. His court was the centre of great splendour, of which the palace and church of Santa Maria del Naranco and San Miguel de Lilo are testimony. On the southern slopes of Mount Naranco, near the city of Oviedo, Ramiro I ordered the construction of the Palace of Santa Maria del Naranco, and a church known as San Miguel de Lilo Alino. The church collapsed in the 13th century, and today only about a third of the original survives. Related service buildings do not survive even as ruins. Another example of Ramirense architecture is the church of Santa Cristina de Lina, near the municipality of Lina, some 30 kilometers from Oviedo. The palace and the two churches have been designated World Heritage Sites by UNESCO. Ramirense architecture introduced barrel vaults made of tufa. These were novel not only with respect to earlier architecture of the region but in terms of the European architecture of the period, including that of Muslim Spain, which used wooden roofs.